Welcome back. This is the seventh episode of Critical Policy Conversations. Again, I'm your host, Eric Felix, an assistant professor at San Diego State University. In today's episode, we'll have a conversation around ways to turn our rage into action. I have the privilege and honor of speaking with Dr. Dominique Baker, an expert in issues of admissions, affirmative action, financial aid, and the influence of race-conscious policies on minoritized community. She serves as assistant professor at Southern Methodist University. Let's hear what drives Dr. Baker's work. And one of the things I was intrigued with was just you saying that you've kind of taken your rage, frustration, anger, and directed it towards the work that you do, whether that's aligning your research with new priorities or making sure that additional people like read it, it's accessible. So you just talk to me about, what that looks like for you and kind of how the pandemic has influenced what you do.
I think it's both the pandemic and continued state-sanctioned murder of Black individuals and those who sort of fight for their rights and equity. Those have really helped me as much as they can help me, right? To think about, like, what's the point? Like, let's just get down to the brass tacks. Like, why does this matter? What am I doing today, tomorrow, yesterday to help people, to help my people? And as I look at responses, as I look at the way that some people engage on these topics or don't, hide their engagement, advocate or don't, it has unleashed a deep well of rage within me, likes of which I haven't seen in a while, maybe ever. And so there are days that my rage consumes me, and I try to do what I can to accept that and find ways to take care of myself. There are days when I'm able to find some clarity. And when that happens, I'm able to try to think about, how do I take that rage and turn it into something for the people, to not be just about me getting tenure, to not just be about another peer-reviewed journal article just to say that I have another one of those, right? Peer-reviewed journal articles have their place in moving us forward. I believe so strongly in science, it is a little bananas, right? Like, I believe in the scientific method. I believe in an incremental progress of learning and knowledge and building what we understand about things in order to move us forward in a positive way. I believe in that strongly. But thinking about doing another pub just for the sake of saying I have this many, or making my CV a little bit longer, I don't have the time for that. We don't have the time for that. So much of this summer has been me trying to think about, if I'm working on a research project, it's because I think it can help people. And I think that's been true of my entire career, but this summer has really focused me even more to say, like, I think I've raised that bar a little bit of like what it takes for a project to clear. Is it helping people?
Right.
And I've always sort of really focused on, okay, can you write at least one public facing explanation of your work? Is that a Twitter thread? Is that a policy brief? Like, what is that? But I took even more time this summer to say yes to some things that I might have previously said. It's the year before I go up for tenure. I don't know that I have the time to write that. Like, no, yes, I'm writing it. And I'm going to take the time to do that, because I think that that is a way that I can use my talents and my skills to help take that rage and transform it into some sort of action.
Similar to you, I've been considering, what impact, if any, my work has done, especially the publications, and this summer, also working on public facing documents that are 3 to 4 pages max, that distill everything that I know about the need for race conscious policies into 4 bullet points, right? And so like that's harder than writing like a 40-page article that
Totally.
instead working with Ed Trust West to get out a policy brief that was written in like maybe 2 weeks and has gotten more attention about why it's so crucial for people just to become aware of Prop 16 and the opportunity to be race conscious again in California with our laws and policies, right? So it's one of the things, it's not even on the radar. And to me, knowing that I've done that kind of research before, especially with the impact on community college, which is not in the discourse around who's affected by 209, usually it's, selective institutions, UCs, UCLA, Berkeley, but recognizing that community colleges, right, that are the largest and serve the most students are detrimentally impacted. So that's one way that, I've tried to focus my effort and attention, being at home 24/7.
I think often we focus on, it's a either or situation, right? You're either focused on trying to get a quote unquote top pub, or you're focused on being there for the community, working with the community, right? I don't like the binary. Yeah. I don't like it. I love research. I really enjoy, I have fun when I code, right? Like I was showing my master's students some code that I've been working on, and like that I get jazzed up. I put on a great song and I vibe out hard. It is a thing that I find genuine enjoyment from, but I don't think doing peer-reviewed journal articles are enough on their own, right? Like it's not enough to communicate. That alone isn't going to communicate your work to the public or the people that can make change, right. The people that can use the evidence, right? And so, yeah, I wholly reject the binary that my work has to sit solely in peer-reviewed journal articles and that my time has to solely be spent on those publications and applying for grants, right? I think this can be a sort of yes and situation. I try to live my life generally from a like improv environment. I don't know how much background you have at improv, right? But like very much from this idea that like when somebody in improv throws you this wild scenario, you're supposed to say yes and. You're not supposed to reject what they're throwing you. You're supposed to try to figure out like, how do you make these things meld and work together? And so that's how I try to approach thinking about what are the ways that I contribute? What are the ways that I use my talent and skills to contribute, right? Because I don't think I do that. Like, it's not going to be just me. It's not going to be just you. We alone don't do this. Individualism, those sorts of things, right? Like that's not what this is. We are a part of communities. We aren't here today, right, without those communities helping us and raising us and helping us to think about the heights that we could go to. And similarly, we have to think about what are we doing to contribute for our community. I come from a family of a long line of professors or folks who are associated with higher ed. And so you could sort of look at that on its face and say, you know, sort of on my mom's side of the family, her dad was president of a university. My grandmother earned her PhD and worked in universities for many years. And you could look on the other side and say, my dad, after he retired from the military, became a professor, right? And so, these things were just all over, right? And it is definitely true that I always grew up knowing, like, if I wanted to be a professor, I could be a professor, right. Which is a gift, right? Because not everyone is given that opportunity to know that that's a choice for them. But if we like dive deeper into that, the foundational piece, I think, is the reality that my dad became a professor after joining the military, right? After actually like going to college and then leaving it because it didn't seem like a place for people like him, and joining the military because that seemed like the best option for him to have some security in life, right? And the fact that like my dad had to put his life on the line to hope for economic security is just foundational thing that I don't know how other people sort of gain the knowledge of what that means for someone, right? Like that is an inherent part of my family's story. Right. Are the ways in which my family members have put their lives on the line for our country and also like for themselves, right? Like a thing that always boggled my mind and confused me was sort of like, why do my parents have to take these different trajectories? Right. What does that mean? What does that look like? What environment was that? And why, what does that mean moving forward? What is my role in trying to help so that other people don't have to make, like, if you want to, we could talk about what a volunteer military service looks like, et cetera. But like, what does it mean to envision a world where people don't have to make the choices my dad had to make in order to make sure that they could be economically secure? What does that look like? What does that mean? How would we envision school? How would we envision work? How would we envision our society? And that's really what drives almost everything that I do is that my dad got to the point that like when most people talk to me, oh, your dad's a professor. Oh, of course, right? Like he always thought he was going to be a professor and da-da-da and all that. But like, that's not true. That was completely not a given for him. And that's a mixture of his economic resources, his race, all sorts of things. But and so I don't think it should be the case that he's like he's one of the few that made it, right? Like that's nonsense to me. I work through all of my research, through my teaching, through the other work that I do through the many different types of service, is always trying to think more critically about how we structure pathways and how we structure choices for people to make it so that you don't have to think that I will put my life on the line to potentially die to try to have economic security.
It really is, at least in my experience now, individualized, right? So I am able to benefit from higher education. I am now a professor, but the economic crisis that we're facing reminds me that my family and my community is not as lucky, right? My parents always being janitors. Now everyone working from home. Well, there's no offices to clean, right? And being unemployed now, moving to hotels and having to clean hotels where they're operable, and putting themselves and their lives on the line every day, and thinking about how easy it is for me to one work, but then also think about how this position provides security and safety, not only for myself, but also for my family. So I've had to reshift the college is a great equalizer, right? And intergenerational mobility, but seeing it only benefit me, and potentially that guilt that I have, and the ways that I bring it back to my own work, studying community colleges, studying transfer pathways that enable individuals to reach a bachelor's degree granting institution, and doubling down on those efforts because Black and Brown students are primarily segregated and stratified into two-year public institutions, and that this work matters so much more for them, and thinking about how those that have always advocated for equity now can leverage those statements from presidents, the affirmation from from colleagues that are anti-racist now that picked up the White Fragility book or Kindi's book, right? And so like, well, let's turn that symbolism or those performative statements into action, right? And so many have done this for so many years. And that's why I don't say like that it's a new call, but it's amplified or renewed, right? Because so many have struggled, quit, risked their livelihood in higher education to move this stuff forward. And now, you know, everyone has that badge of being anti-racist, but, you know, how do we actually enact that, live it out, and put people at the task, right? If this is what you're saying on your Facebook or on your Twitter, like let's see it play out in the classroom and your counseling sessions, the ways that you interact with others, right?
No, I mean, totally, right? There's this weird dynamic of like, I try to not get like extremely personal on Twitter or social media or things of that nature. I guess Twitter's my only social media now. It's tricky, right? Because like a thing I've tried to do occasionally this summer is think through like, when are there times where I feel comfortable enough sharing my personal pain or the things that I'm currently going through, to try to make sure that other people are not thinking about these things in an abstract manner. Right. And it's hard because I recognize where my space is in this field, right? I recognize that I'm an assistant professor. I could not get tenure, et cetera, et cetera, right? There's tons of things about my life, things that are always in the back of my mind. And I say that because you could worry that like people won't take me as seriously. People won't view my work as important or all those sorts of things, right? Because, I don't know about others, but I definitely have commented. There were folks when I was doing my PhD, right, who like thought that I focused too much on race, or told me I would fail an assignment if I included CRT as my framework because it wasn't real, right? So like those are, I mean, life. So, and it's just, it's funny to me now, right? But like those were real things where like people had power over my life and my career, and they were hard decisions that I had to think about. But also like for me, this summer has really crystallized when we think about all of the emotions. This summer has really crystallized for me that just, if what it comes down to is I need to share with people like real talk, this is hard. I have a lot of days where I cry and where I'm trying to figure out like, what can I do to help people? And that's not like, what can I do to get the next peer-reviewed publication? Like, what can I do to help people? And if you have a problem with that, like, okay, I guess you have a problem with that. That's how I can make sure, some nights I don't sleep, but when I'm trying to get myself to sleep, like that's how I remind myself is I'm trying to do more than just get the next publication.
Yeah, and I think sometimes that's hard for emerging scholars to to only
Yeah.
see the publications or the notoriety, but not think about everything that's behind it, all the responsibilities. And similar to your point, I think I take my responsibilities as a scholar seriously, but I don't take my role necessarily seriously, or at least I know that I need to be there for my family, for my son,
Mm-hmm.
for my community. And then beyond that, that we show that we take breaks, that, you know, that we go on walks. I mean, whatever it might be, like, you know, that there's joy outside of this work.
Yes.
So that's really important.
No, completely agree. I think so many people are dealing with things that folks can't imagine. And so I spent a lot of time when I was working on my syllabus with trying to craft my statement, right? When we talk about this broadly, I am not being hyperbolic when I say a lot of people are dealing with the death of their loved ones, that people are like, let's get to brass tacks here. And that is true death from the pandemic. That is true concerns of, you know, death with state violence. We have to find ways to be kind to our students in the same way to be kind to our colleagues and kind to ourselves. I think it's important, and it's so much easier to say than do this, right?
Right.
But like, I think it's important to really be careful about thinking, what is productivity right now?
Mm-hmm.
What are my goals for the semester? What are my goals for this academic year? What does it mean to be successful and to say that I've done a good job? So much of what we are dealing with completely upends a lot of these, you know, sort of capitalistic ideas around what it means to be a good professor, what it means to be a good researcher. And, you know, some people are able to be productive right now, and that's great. That's wonderful for them. But I think we have to be really careful with thinking about what does it mean for us to push that people need to go after every pandemic focus grant, or to focus, you know, really hard on getting, just pumping out as many papers as possible. It's one of the reasons why I think, you know, so much of the concerns around higher education and the labor force has to be on staff, and has to be on staff who are not protected and who are very easily furloughed and fired. I think there are many ways to work towards justice in all of its forms. And that includes protest organizing, donations. That includes the small ways of organizing, right? So like, if you're a faculty member who's tenure line, you can speak up for your contingent faculty peers, for your staff peers, for your students. There are small ways, there are big ways, right? And so I think that people have to decide, like, where are the spaces that make sense for them? Because, right, like you mentioned at the top, like of this part, like, you know, the expectations are still there. Okay, well, it's not like those expectations came from a primordial ooze. Like, those people made those. Okay, so then let's talk. What does that mean? Who we got to talk to? Who are chairs of departments that we need to talk to? Chairs of P&T committees that we need to talk to? Who in associations do we need to talk to say, hey, when you're writing external letters for the next X number of years, you need to take this into consideration. It doesn't matter if the university writes a letter or not. These are things that matter that we need to, right? Like, where are the lever points that we can start talking to people to say, okay, those expectations need to be shifted. Let's get about the work of shifting them. I can't do all of that, right? I don't have tenure. Cannot stress enough. Maybe fired in a year, right? So like, there's only so much I can do. Of the things that I can do, I want to try to use the power that I have to advocate for others, with others, right? I think about all of these pieces. Like, I really resonate with what you're saying, and I'm just like, okay, what can I do? What are the small things and the small ways? Because, you know, a thing that I can't even remember who said it, but I think a lot about who you are as an assistant professor is who you'll be as a professor. Mm-hmm. Right? You know, like, some people find that it makes more sense for them to speak out for things after they have tenure, and that's their choice. And I'm not going to I'm not here to like blame game or anything of that nature. What I will say is that I've made the choice that, like, if you don't want to tenure me as this, right, like, okay, then that is what it is. I try to do good work that helps people, and that's what I'm going to keep doing.
When I came to San Diego State, I said I'm going to have fun for these 5 to 6 years, and I'm going to prioritize in this order: being a partner, being a parent, and then being a professor, and sticking to that for these years, right? Because those are the most important things when we're thinking about deadlines or about, I could have had that one more publication, but no, like I had that time in the playground, or I had that date night or whatever that kept me sane, that kept me grounded, and that allowed me to work the next day for X amount of hours, right? I'm also at a benefit in terms of having a 2-year-old that brings me joy every day, right? So like when there is so much heartbreak in the world,
Yeah.
I have something to look forward to, every day.
What I'll say is I think research can be powerful. I think theorizing and thinking deeply and critically about issues can be, it's astoundingly powerful. But I think we have to want it to be. And what I say by that is it is not enough to do that research, to do that deep thinking, and then just keep all that goodness to ourselves. And so I am proud of the work that I do. I try to think carefully about what are the ways that I can communicate it. I was really fortunate, like for One Piece, to have folks reach out to me and say, is there anything that you think policymakers need to be thinking about when it comes to financial aid? And to say, oh yeah, no. I definitely think that there are some things that we need to be thinking about with this pandemic and student financial aid, and to have the opportunity to write that out. What people may not know, right, is like at the same time, I would just like to point out that I literally just got an invitation to review for a journal. It just popped up. So, they're always going to ask for more. But as I was writing that piece, right, someone that I know became sick. And I had to tell people, like, I got to put part of this on pause. I got to make sure that my family is okay. I need to take care of some things, and then I'll come back to this, right? And they were like, yes, that's what you need to prioritize. That's what you need to focus on. I think we have to do the work, the very deep, thoughtful research and thinking critically about that. But then we also have to think about, how do we communicate it? How do we get it out there? How do we make sure that people know about it, and be humble with that, right? To make sure that we say, like, I don't know everything. I darn sure don't know everything. And I don't think one study I do is going to change the world overnight. I'm here to build a body of evidence to help people better understand and grow, and find ways that they can apply some of that. And I can learn from them about, oh, I need to be thinking about these questions, not the ones I was trying to do. These are the ones that matter more, I come back to a piece that, now MacArthur genius, Tristan Villencottam, said that, these institutions can't love us. They will ask us to do every single thing possible, and then they'll ask us to do 5 more. And so I have to be thinking about, what are my goals, what are my priorities, and how can I make them align?
What you said around, when you were doing your PhD and there were faculty that maybe pushed you away from using CRT or embedding more critical elements. And I think about like my first year screening letter, and not that it haunts me, but like they wrote, like, although it's clear that advocacy is your passion, in order to be an effective scholar, publication and research must be too, right? So what you mentioned, like the and or, right, that they're mutually exclusive. So I was being socialized in terms of advocacy isn't research or scholarship, right? Publications are here, advocacy is here. Something that you have shown effectively, and that I'm also trying to do, is that our policy and our research has to be aligned and embedded with advocacy. And so I'm glad that you weren't dissuaded from using race or critical approaches to your work, and now we're all benefiting from that.
No, thank you. Here's hoping. But, I believe strongly that if you can try to find what your North Star is, what your goal is, if you stick to that, then at the end of the day, you can look at yourself in the mirror. And that's my goal every day. Can I look at myself in the mirror? As long as that's the case, we'll deal with everything else.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Thank you again. Yeah, of course. I do.
Appreciate y'all tuning in to the 7th episode of Critical Policy Conversations with Dr. Dominique Baker, Assistant Professor at Southern Methodist University.